In a previous episode, we had a look at the life of Ragnar Lodbrok and the first half of his and his son's saga. Before we carry on, you may be wondering how these stories used to be told in the Viking era. Books or written documents were not widely used by the Scandinavian people then, so oral history played a large role in society. Responsible for the telling of such tales to pass on from generation to generation were the so-called scouts, bards of the north in a manner of speaking. They might have very well recited these poems with the backing of a musical instrument, such as a harp or lyre. Educated guesses have been made as to what this would have looked and sounded like. Exhibit A. That's not right. Not that either. Close enough. How did that end up here? You'll just have to take it from me that they were a pretty big deal for the people listening to them back then. Now let's carry on with our saga. Then he gave up his life, and he was taken out of there. And King Ælla thought he knew that it was Ragnar who had given up his life. Then he thought to himself how he could come to know of this, and how he could hold his kingdom, and how he could know in what way the Ragnar sons would react when they learned of this. He decided on a plan. He then readied a ship and chose a man to carry out that plan, who was both wise and hardy. Then he chose men so that the ship was well manned, and said that he wanted to send a message to Ivar and the others and to tell them of the fall of their father. But the journey seemed most hopeless, so that few wanted to go. Then the king spoke. And you must attend closely to how each of the brothers react to these tidings. Then travel away afterwards when you are given fair winds. So he had the journey prepared so that they wanted nothing. And then they journeyed, and they traveled well. They went on so that they came to Denmark, and when the messengers came with their troops to the town where the sons of Ragnar were being given a feast, they went into the hall where they were drinking, and went before the high seat where Ivar was lying. Sigurd Orme I Auga and Hvitserk sat playing hneftafel, and Björn Jornsida was carving a spear shaft on the floor of the hall. He received their greeting, and asked where they were from, and what tidings they bore. And the one, who was their leader, said that they were Englishmen, and that King Ælla had sent them thither with tidings which spoke the fall of Ragnar, their father. Hvitserk and Sigurd quickly let the tafel pieces fall from their hands, and they attended closely to the tiding tale. Björn stood on the floor of the hall and leaned on his spear shaft, but Ivar asked him exactly what the circumstances of Ragnar's life leaving had been, and they told it all as it happened, from the time he came to England until the time he gave up his life. And then when the tale came to when he had said the young boars might crumble, Björn squeezed the spear shaft with his hand, and he squeezed so strongly that the print of his hand was seen on it afterwards. When the messengers ended the recounting, Björn shook the spear asunder, so that it broke into 2 pieces, and Hvitserk held the tafel piece that he had been moving, and he crushed it so strongly that blood spurted out from under each fingernail. And Sigurd Orme I Auga had been holding a knife and paring his nails when the tidings were being told, and he listened so closely to the tidings that he did not notice until the knife stood in the bone, and he did not flinch at that. But Ivar asked how it all had happened, and his color was now red, now livid, and he would suddenly become very pale, and he was so swollen that his flesh was all mortified from the anger that was in his breast. Then Hvitserk began to speak, and said that vengeance could be most quickly taken by killing the messengers of King Ælla. Ivar said, "That shall not be. They shall go in peace wherever they wish, and anything which they lack they need only ask me for, and I shall secure it for them." And when they ended their errand, they turned back out of the hall and to their ships. But when they were given wind, they put out to sea, and they travelled well until they came to a meeting with King Ælla, and they told him how each of the brothers had reacted to the tiding signs. And when King Ælla heard that, he spoke. "It is certain that we will need fear either Ivar or else no one, because of what you say of him. Thoughts of revenge do not run very deep in them, and we will manage to hold our kingdom against them." Then he had watchmen sent throughout all his kingdom, so that no army might come at him unknown. And when the messengers of King Ælla had gone away, the brothers began to discuss how they should go about revenging Ragnar, their father. Then Ivar spoke. "I will have no part in this. I shall not muster troops, for it happened with Ragnar as I thought it would. He prepared badly for his action from the beginning. He had no grievance with King Ælla, and it often happens that if a man stubbornly decides to act unjustly, he is brought down contemptibly in such a way. And I will accept compensation from King Ælla if he will give it to me." But when the brothers heard that, they became very angry, and said that they would never become so cowardly, although he wished to be. Many might say that we wrongly rest our hands upon our knees if we do not seek further vengeance when before we have fared widely across the land with war shields and killed many a guiltless man. But it shall not be so. Rather, every ship in Denmark that is seaworthy shall be readied. The most skilled troops shall be gathered, so that every man who may bear a shield against King Ælla shall travel with us. But Ivar said that he would leave behind all those ships that he commanded, except for that one which I will be upon myself. And when it was heard that Ivar would not take any part in the action, they received many fewer troops, but they went nonetheless. And when they came to England, King Ælla became aware of it and quickly had his trumpet sounded and called to him all the men who wished to assist him. And then he went with so many troops that no one could say how many had come, and he went to meet the brothers. Then the armies met with each other, and Ivar was not there when they clashed in battle. And when the battle ended, it came about that the sons of Ragnar fled, and King Ælla had the victory. And while the king was pursuing the fleeing host, Ivar told his brothers that he did not intend to turn back to his land. "And I desired to find out whether King Ælla will do me any honor or not. It seems to me better to thus receive compensation from him, than to fare often again as we have now fared." Hvitserk said that he would not have any dealings with him, and he could go about his affairs as he wished. "But we shall never take payment for our father." Ivar said that he would part with them, and told them to hold the kingdom that they had all held together. "And you should send me my things when I ask for them." And when he had spoken, he bade them farewell. Then he turned away to meet with King Ælla, and when he came before him, he greeted the king worthily, and spoke to him thus. "I have come to meet with you, and I want to come to an arrangement with you on such compensation as you will prepare for me. And now I see that I have nothing compared to you, and it seems to me better to accept such compensation from you as you will grant me, rather than to lose my men or myself to you." Then King Ælla answered, "Some men claim it is not safe to trust you, and that you speak most fairly when you are thinking deceitfully. It would be difficult to defend against you and your brothers. I will ask little of you. If you will grant it, I will swear to you in this manner, that I shall never be against you." Then the king asked him to say what compensation he wanted. "I want you to give me as much of your land as an ox hide covers, and outside of that shall be the outer boundary. I will not ask more from you, and I think that you wish me little honor if you will not grant me this." "I do not know," said the king, "whether it might harm us if you have that much of my land, but I think I will give it to you, if you swear not to bear arms against me. If you are true to me, I shall not fear your brothers." Then they discussed the matter between the two of them, and Ivar swore him an oath that he would not strike against him and not conspire to cause him harm, and he should have as much of England as an ox hide could cover, the largest he might find. Then Ivar took a hide from an old bull, and he had it softened, and then he had it stretched 3 times, and then he had it laid around a field, and there was as much space as was within a large town, and there he had the foundations marked for a large town wall. And then he gathered to him many craftsmen and had many houses raised on the field, and there he had a large town built, and it was called Lundunabor. It is the largest and most famous of all towns in the northern lands. When Ivar had proceeded with his plan until it seemed that peace was guaranteed him, he sent men to find his brothers and tell them that they should send as much gold and silver as he asked for. And when these men came to find the brothers, they told their errand as to what had come of Ivar's plan. namely, that men thought they did not know what cunning he was preparing, and therefore the potters thought that he did not have the same disposition as he was wont to have. Then they sent such goods as he had asked for, and when the goods came to Ivar, he gave all the goods to the strongest men in the land and stole the troops out from under King Ælla. They all said that they would sit quiet, though he might later prepare for a war going. And when Ivar had thus stolen the troops out from under the king, then he sent men to find his brothers and to say to them that he wanted them to send a levy throughout all the lands which their rule stretched over. They should demand however many men they could get. When this word sending came to the brothers, they quickly figured out that he most likely thought it very promising that they might now gain victory. Then they summoned troops all over Denmark and Jutland and all the kingdoms which they had power over, and an innumerable amount was gathered together when the assemblage was complete. They then held course in their ships towards England both night and day, for they wanted to let as little forewarning of their coming to travel before them as possible. Then war tidings were told to King Ælla. He summoned his troops, but he gathered few men because Ivar had stolen many troops out from under him. Then Ivar went and met King Ælla and said that he wished to carry through on with that which he had sworn. But I cannot influence my brothers' doing. However, I can plan to find them and know if they will stop their army and do no more ill than they have already done. Then Ivar went to meet his brothers and encouraged them greatly to go forth as best as they could and let the battle come about as soon as possible, because the king has very few troops. And they answered that he did not need to encourage them, as their intent was the same as before. Then Ivar went and met King Ælla and told him that they were too eager and enraged to listen to his words. And when I wanted to bring peace between you, they shouted against it. I will now carry through with my vow that I would not war against you. I will be quiet along with my troops, and the battle with you may go as it will. Then King Ælla saw the troops of the brothers, and they came so fiercely that it was wondrous. Then Ivar spoke. Now is the time that you should prepare your troops, King Ælla, and I think that they will press against you with a strong onslaught for a while. And as soon as the troops met each other, there was a great battle, and the sons of Ragnar came hard upon the army of King Ælla. Their vehemence was so great that their only thoughts were how they might work the most damage, and the war was both long and hard, and the battle ended thus. King Ælla and his troops took to flight, but he was seized. Ivar was then nearby, and he said that they should now bring about his life leaving. Now is the time, he said, to remember the manner of death which he inflicted on our father. Now a man who is most skilled in wood carving shall mark an eagle on his back so precisely that the eagle shall redden with his blood. And that man, when he was called to this task, did as Ivar commanded him, and King Ælla was in great agony before the task was ended. Then he gave up his life, and it seemed to them that they then had vengeance for their father Ragnar. Ivar said that he wanted to give them the kingdom that they all held together, and he wished to rule over England. After that, Hvitserk and Björn journeyed home to their kingdom along with Sigurd, but Ivar stayed behind and ruled England. From then on they kept their troops together less and harried in various lands, and Aslaug, their mother, became an old woman. Ivar ruled over England until his dying day, when he became deathly sick. And when he lay with that killing illness, he said that he should be moved to that place which was most exposed to raiding, and he said that he expected that any who would land there would not gain victory. And when he breathed his last, it was done as he had said, and he was then laid in a hoe. And then, when the sons of Ragnar had all given up on their lives, the troops who had assisted them were dispersed far and wide, and all of them who had been with the sons of Ragnar thought that there was no worth in other princes. Thus, the saga of Ragnar Lodbrok and his sons comes to an end. Historically accurate accounts? Well, doubtful. Rooted in real historical events? Most certainly. Even if the existence of a single Ragnar who achieved all of the things he did has been called into doubt. What isn't in doubt is the lasting impact his supposed sons left on Britain. In 865, the great heathen army landed in Anglia, where they killed Edmund the Martyr and Tedford before moving northwards and besieging the city of York, where King Ælla did indeed meet his death. Following years of raids, this would mark the beginning of a nearly 200-year period of Norse occupation in the east and north of England. How that all went down? Well, that's something we can't find out with certainty. Next time. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, do leave a comment and a like, or subscribe if you wish to help the channel grow. Any support is always very appreciated. See you next time.